Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Ron Johnson is responsible for the iconic Apple Store and Genius Bar that are loved by retail specialists and consumers alike. After years of transforming the retail strategies for retailers like Apple and Target, Ron is pioneering the next leap in the retail revolution, bringing the personalized e-commerce shopping experience from your screen to your doorstep. As the CEO of Enjoy, Ron says that the future of retail will take place in your living room. In this interview, Ron is back on the podcast talking about taking the next step in the shopping experience. We talk about what inspired this transformational approach to retail and what impact it will have as Enjoy grows with their new partners. I asked Ron to call on his experience in traditional retail as well as with Enjoy to offer retailers key pieces of advice and insight on navigating post-COVID world.
In physical stores, you've always had stores optimized for convenience, stores optimized for experience.
Yeah.
Right? And the premium brands have tended to be optimized for experience. In the online world, all you've had is stores optimized for convenience.
Let's listen in now. Ron, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, it's great to hear from you again. I'm very excited. Read today in the New York Times that August 9th, the border opens between Canada and the U.S., and I can't wait to get back to Canada. It's a great place and visit our business partners and spend time.
Well, it's been a long time that the world's longest undefended border has been closed. I mean, it's so unusual. Like everything's unusual, right? And during this pandemic, but that's just been such a difference. So yeah, looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to the reciprocal, right? Looking forward to go down and see all my business partners in the U.S. Real soon as well. I've actually just booked my NRF January show. I'm going to go to the NRF this year. I just booked my hotel. I just went ahead and did it.
Okay. Well, we're all learning to, obviously the pandemic's not over at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's still a very dangerous time, particularly for unvaccinated people.
Yeah.
And we're finding that here in the U.S., but we are moving to what I like to think of as a series of next normals.
Yeah.
And one of the next normals would be the chance to do cross-border travel between the U.S. and North America. And then the other big next normal will be, how do we return to work? How do you return to the office? And that's a big topic on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you think about lasting, and we'll get to this in the discussion, but lasting impacts of the COVID era, as I've called it. I mean, there's some things that were just temporary adjustments that we made to our lives. And then I think often about what, if anything, is permanent. And we'll get to that in terms of consumer behavior. But I think the work from home movement was certainly there pre-pandemic and the before time. It's not like the technology's new, but it just seems culturally that I've talked to many CEOs, retail CEOs, who would never think about hiring like a director or VP of marketing that wasn't, living and working in their office. But now that many of them are open to it, like it's cultural, right? Are you experiencing the same thing in your discussions with your counterparts?
Absolutely. It's I kind of feel like you can now have a global talent pool for core positions, and as long as you can make remote work, you're able to expand the number of people and the type of people you can recruit. And that's been a part of the Valley here, the Bay Area. I live in Palo Alto, as you know, work in Palo Alto because it's kind of the nature of what we do here. It's very expensive to live here. It's hard to get people to move here, but it's increasing. And so if you look at Enjoy now, my CFO lives in Chicago. My chief administrative and people officer lives in Florida. My chief legal general counsel lives in Atlanta and New York. My chief commercial officer is in England.
Wow.
And so we've got a very distributed team, and it's better because we can attract better people. And especially when you're trying to build, as an example, diversity.
Yeah.
When you try to hire diverse talent, you're already working with a kind of a smaller group and you're recruiting, and there are challenges with that, but it opens up the funnel and you can find better people. So I embrace it personally. I think for some people it'll be slower though. They want to be in person and they like that way to work. And so it'll vary by company, by leader, et cetera.
Now thinking back on your decades of leadership, has it always been such for you, or is this something that has come to you perhaps as you launched Enjoy, or has the pandemic?
I'm kind of whether it's well regarded or not, I'm a person who tends to lean forward, tends to see around corners, tends to be very comfortable going where, as your famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky would say, where the puck's going.
Right on.
That's kind of my nature. So I tend to lean in a lot earlier to longer term trends. And so I think in this one, I'm probably ahead of the game a little bit, but, and hopefully I'm on the right path.
Well, right on, right on. So the last time, I was reflecting on the last time you and I spoke. I should say welcome back. This is your second time on the podcast. I was sitting in a hotel room in Dublin, and the last time we saw each other in person was in Montreal. I had dinner with your friend Troy Dunn, who had come up to see you from Apple, who you remember from Apple. So it's been a while. Lots has happened. Why don't we start a little bit for the listeners who may not have heard our first interview, a little bit of your background, and then a little bit, if not more, because we're going to talk a lot about Enjoy. Just outline that concept for us.
Sure. So I'm a lifelong retail guy. I'm already, believe it or not, I'm in my early 60s, but I tend to think of myself as 58 because in Italy, for example, your age is your birth year. So I'm always 58 the year I'm born. And I was born. So I'm 58, but I began.
Wait a minute, I'm 63 then. That doesn't work for
nice? Me. Isn't that nice? That's a great thing. And it kind of, I like that too, because it kind of quickly positions you, the generation you grew up in, which suddenly gives you a perspective about that person. It isn't that they're old. Oh, they were born in the 50s and they lived through the 60s. I actually really like it, but that's another topic another day. No, I grew up and I went to Harvard Business School and I just wanted to be a retail guy. I just thought it'd be a great industry for me. It's like sports. It's competitive. It's fast moving. It's people intensive. You can change things quickly. It's creative. It's about winning. And so I joined the retail industry. I started at a company called Mervyn's, which was very successful, had just been bought by Target Corp. I went to Target. I went to Apple. I went to JCPenney and I founded Enjoy. So I've done lots of things in my career. Probably most noted for the work I did at Target, where in the 90s, Target was really, like all the discounters, struggling to compete with Walmart, which had a huge advantage on cost structure, technology, and we shifted to win on design. And that helped Target become Target, along with great marketing. And to this day, Target in the U.S. has never been better. They're over $100 billion market cap. It's tripled during the pandemic. And
they really hit their, when I look at numbers, even e-commerce numbers, they really hit their stride. I look at growth percentage year over year, and as amongst their counterparts, they grew more. And I think it's, clever design. I also think they made some smart decisions around shipped. And so they've really, they're really done well.
That shows the power of great leadership, because 4 years ago, their CEO, Brian Cornell, laid out a vision that he was going to invest $7 billion in the physical stores, improving lighting and everything they do, but most importantly, enabling the store to become the engine of e-commerce, meaning it's like a distribution center. And then they acquired Shipt, and they were going to work on speed to the customer. People could pick up. And what's profound to me is there's all these systems now that you watch daily traffic, right? And the most important thing about Target right now is its traffic is up double digits over 2019 in its stores, while its e-commerce is growing faster than its competitors. And so Target's hitting it on all cylinders. But I was at Target in the 90s when it really developed its merchandising vision, its marketing vision, and now it's got great operations paired with that. I went to Apple in 2000 to imagine the retail stores and spent a dozen years on Apple's executive team working with, Steve and Tim and the whole team during a period when Apple moved beyond the Mac. It launched the iPod, the phone, the iPad when it built out its retail stores. So it changed how it connected with customers. It changed the product families. It was a great time for me. I went to JCPenney, had a very challenging time trying to turn around a department store.
Yep.
But then I'm doing kind of the culmination of my life work. I'm doing Enjoy right now, which is really fun.
Well, let's talk about Enjoy. I mean, the last time you and I spoke, it was pretty early on in Enjoy. You weren't even in Canada yet at that time. That was yet to come. So tell the listeners about Enjoy.
Yeah, it's really simple. Like I said earlier, I tend to see the future and want to do it now. Mm-hmm. What I see is commerce has been moving to the home really rapidly for 30 years. We call it online shopping because when it started in the 90s, principally by Amazon, you had to be on a computer to shop online. There were no smartphones.
Right.
And very few people had internet connections at the home or had email. And so they called it online shopping. It was for the 3% who happened to be tech savvy and be online. And they started with books. Well, the choice you were making is, should I buy a book at home or should I go to the store? It was commerce at home or commerce at store.
Yep.
And it was interesting. In about 2011, I had a chance to meet Brian Chesky, and that was the early days of Airbnb. He's the founder, as you know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he told me, he said, we were having breakfast in San Francisco. He said, Ron, my dream is to turn your home into a hotel. And the lights went on. That's commerce at home.
Right.
Instead of going to the hotel, I can go to a home. Then I was in New York and I met John Foley, who was early days of Peloton. Mm-hmm. And he said, in fact, my dream is to turn your home into an exercise studio. So instead of going to SoulCycle, I'd come to the home. And then it hit me, well, maybe you could bring the entire store to the home.
Right.
Instead of getting to the door, what if you could go through the door and bring a full retail experience? So Enjoy does that. We operate mobile retail stores for some of the world's best companies. And we can do everything you do in a store, everything, but I say better, because when we come through the home, you're in your environment. You're comfortable. It's where you live your life. It's where all your products come together. It's unhurried, right? It's uninterrupted. It's a great environment to have a retail experience. And so our partners, what we do is we operate stores for companies like Rogers in Canada.
Yep.
Throughout Canada, and increasingly throughout Canada, you can just go to Rogers.com or go through their call center and book an appointment to have someone come to you and deliver a full retail experience. It's so,
I've always loved the idea, but I'm a big Apple user. I've got everything Apple, and stitching it all together, and there's so much. I figure out the basics, but I always know you pick up tips, and I'm sure this is what some of the conversations in the home are. Is, did you know you could do X? And what do you need it for? And, these things, this discovery process, not just the customer service, but the discovery process just feels to me like the right direction to go generally, right?
Yes, well, it's particularly true, as you know, with a company like Apple. And we know, I don't know if you know it, Michael, we operate stores for Apple in the U.S. So we just, added Chicago last week, the D.C. Baltimore area, Atlanta, to go with the West Coast, California and Texas. And but the perfect example is an Apple experience at home is pretty cool. We deliver your product. We set it up. We activate it using the SIM card of your carrier of preference. We can take your trade-ins and give you value on the spot. You can buy anything you want that's in the driveway, because we have a mobile warehouse in the driveway, which is our mobile store. And we use a QR code, and you just customize. You look at that website and you go, I like AirPods. But more importantly, we unlock services. That's really important. Apple, increasingly how you use your phone. This week, Ted Lasso.
That's right.
The number one Emmy decorated or nominated comedy from last year. Right. We can get them set up for that so they can watch it on opening night and binge watch before. All that is a conversation, right?
Right.
And the drop off doesn't help with that. And so if you're a premium company and you want to engage with your customers, online commerce is actually a challenge versus the store. But that's the way the world's moving. So if you want to win, you got to find a way to engage for a digital customer, and that's what Enjoy specializes in. Well,
it's a continuation on that spectrum. If the way I think of retail is bifurcating between experience and efficiency, and as you say, shopping online is very efficient, gets it to your door quickly, but the experience can fall short. Now, you've one of the things that
that's the big deal, right? So in physical stores, you've always had stores optimized for convenience, stores optimized for experience.
Yeah.
Right. And the premium brands have tended to be optimized for experience. In the online world, all you've had is stores optimized for convenience. So all we're doing is bringing that same paradigm to the home. So now you have a choice at home. Do I want to deliver to the door or through the door? And you'll make those choices. And so I see a world 10 years from now where most of what we buy will be convenience. That's kind of how we live our lives.
Yeah.
But there'll be products for which we want more. Mm-hmm. And we'll invite someone through the door.
What brought us together today specifically was some announcements you made about some financial investments in the organization that looks like it's going to take it to a new level. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, we're going public later this summer, and that will allow us to secure about $450 million of capital so we can expand faster globally. We're operating now in Canada, the United Kingdom, the U.S., we have ambition to operate throughout the developed world and to explore new initiatives. And it's like anything. When you start on a journey, especially when you're doing something really new, there are a lot of paths you could take. And we want to be well capitalized. So we'll be going public. We've got a great sponsor. It's a company out of Chicago, that all of you, especially your listeners in Toronto, would be familiar with. As you get to Chicago a lot, it's one of the big cities nearby. And but the Ricketts family out of Chicago that owns the Cubs is a partner, and along with a group from New York. But they're great partners, so we'll do that sometime this summer.
Now, when you capitalize like that, what does that go into? Is that people? Is that trucks, equipment? Is technology? Everything, right?
Everything. No, it's more for us. It's a little bit technology. Our headquarters group is about half engineering, and it's to continue to invent the mobile store. We want to be faster. Right now we're really fast, but we want to be the absolute fastest way you can get a product. I think there'll be a day when we have inventory within 15 minutes of the customer for every product you might want to buy. That's pretty fast.
That's pretty fast. Until you invent teleporting, but maybe that's on your roadmap too,
I think
knowing
we're really close to that, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That's going to take a lot of engineering. But then we're going to invent, it's going to help us be better. But it'll also help us grow. So we will open up in, additional countries, probably in 2023, maybe a little sooner, but we'll see. It's good to have good capital. It's also good to have a strong balance sheet when you work with the world's biggest companies. So Apple's got a lot of cash last time I look at their balance sheet.
Yeah, they've done well. Well,
they generate $1 billion of cash a week or more. And so we're only going to raise $450 million. That's like 3 days of Apple's work.
It's crazy. I mean, their free cash flow is just, what they shut off in free cash flow.
But in fact, we're going to put on the balance sheet 3 days of Apple's cash generation. So obviously, you can't support a company like that without a strong balance sheet.
Yeah, right on. Shifting gears a bit, I wanted to tap into both your experience recently at Enjoy and your experience as a retailer, just to help us understand what the heck just happened. We were talking off mic, the pandemic isn't over yet, but we're definitely in a new phase, thanks to the miracle of the vaccine. I mean, as I've described it, we can see the goalpost, we can see the end zone, but the goalposts keep moving a bit. But with such change, two questions. One, how did you manage with Enjoy? I mean, that's in the home. That must have been a challenge that you had to work around, I'd imagine. And then as you reflect on this with your background, do we have any sense, or do you have any sense of what just happened? I mean, you and I, if we were sitting together over dinner, we would be thrilled to move a percentage share, but we've seen like 30s and 40% consumer changes. So how do you view what just happened?
Well, we just got teleported 5 years. I mean, you think about it. Basically, the long-term trends that were inevitable. People were starting more online. Tired retailers would have to close because they were going to be outcompeted and they didn't have good balance sheets. We basically moved from 2019 to 2024 overnight. And we're now at a phase of commerce at home and store-based commerce that's probably would have taken a little longer to get to. Mm-hmm. But that's the fundamental change. And customers' habits change. But the big thing here is, we talk about it all the time. You read it. You want to change a habit. It takes about 21 days of strong behavior. Well, we were forced to live at home, work from home, shop from home, get food delivered at home. We couldn't go out.
Play at home, learn at home, everything.
So I think the habits aren't going back, right? Mm-hmm. And so the trends that we always talked about, we talked about before. For a store to compete, you got to do something more than convenience. So then the transaction, you got to build an experience. So the companies that are thriving were further down that curve. And people want to get out. I mean, they're going out. It's hard. You go to the shopping mall on the weekend, it's hard to find parking. People are out. They're being social. In New York, they call it for the young kids. What do the kids call it? I can't remember, but it's this big time for them to get out and have fun. And they're all moving to New York. And one of the hardest things to do now is to rent an apartment in New York. And
that's crazy, right?
The world's changed. But I think fundamentally, we just accelerated 5 years ahead. And so the businesses that had started, a lot of the delivery companies, the DoorDashes, they've accelerated. Uber's accelerated shift. It now does more deliveries than it does rides. There's just a lot of change. Enjoy has a bigger opportunity because commerce at home is going to become a bigger deal faster. There was a great acceleration.
I have to think that a couple of big trends also play in that favor, so to speak, which is work from home. Right. We talked about that at the beginning. I mean, I think it's pretty clear, like a linear connection, that when you work from home, you do more shopping either locally or from home. Yeah. And then, the second thing is, as you say, Ontario, where I am, just came out of 150 days of store lockdowns. And people are just, 150 days for what they call non-essential in Ontario, which is like apparel, basically. So imagine people are rushing back to the stores, but I feel it's a bit of a phantom. In other words, people are going to rush back and then, just to reassert their lives again to feel normal. But then I think it'll come back to, I think I want to go back home again. Like it feels like we're going to have this wave of nostalgia almost, but then it goes back to the home. The U.S. is a bit ahead of that, and you work around the world.
Here's what it is, though. You rush to the store, which is great. Yeah. But then you have zero tolerance for a bad experience. Right. Because you realize how convenient it is at home. Right. And so the customer is much more discerning. And unfortunately, when I go through stores, the tired retailers actually look more tired. It's been 18 months. Those stores didn't get freshened up very much. Right. The merchandise in the stores is actually very light. If you look at inventory and you look at specialty apparel, part of that's the logistics challenges of the pandemic. Yeah. But people are short on inventory. Most retailers, when business gets tough, and during the pandemic it was tough, their volumes dropped, they tend to get safer, so they don't invest in fashion. And so you go to the store and you actually, I think a lot of people, while it's fun to be out, you're kind of disappointed in what you discover. I hate to say that. I'm not a negative person, but that's the lens I see it through. And so I think that's part of the challenge for retailers is they just don't look great right now. Now, there's exceptions to that. Like Target looks better than it ever has. But remember, they were an essential that's right, plowed through the thing. And so the essential retailers really got an advantage because they didn't have to close. Yeah, that arbitrary distinction was really painful for many. I mean, in some provinces in Canada, they said everyone can open, but you can only have 10 or 20% capacity, which felt more fair to everyone. Right. Ontario took a different path and said, you're closed or open. So you had big retailers. But these are tough decisions for government.
Oh, very tough.
I don't envy the people that have to make, even now. Yeah. People, the whole decision, should you mandate a vaccine? Should you have vaccine passports? These get into very tricky decisions. Obviously, for the safety and health of the world, you should have vaccine mandates and passports.
How are you handling that on the doorstep?
We don't. Well, we use an honor code, so our employees all have to submit into Enjoy. I'm vaccinated. I'm not. I I don't want to disclose. And then people that are not vaccinated, don't want to disclose, have to wear masks. We know who they are, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't disclosed, we'll assume you're not vaccinated. And we're doing that for safety. And then we wouldn't go through the door without a mask unless the customer invited us in and we were vaccinated. So we're all trying to develop, protocols on how you do it. But it's a complicated thing. But clearly, if you were focused on safety and world health, you would mandate a vaccine. But it kind of goes counter to how a lot of people believe right now, where we believe we ought to have a lot of freedom to make these decisions. And you got to respect people's rights to have their own opinion. Yeah. So
interesting. Well, listen, it's deeply connected to your style of business. So I'm sure you guys put a lot of thought into it. What's next? I mean, we've talked basically about what's next in a broader sense. You've got more capital to work, global expansion, on a list of 1, 2, or 3, you've got opportunities. Which ones are you focused on first, second, and third? How do you look at that?
First, second, and third is to just do a great job for Rogers, Apple, AT&T, our current customers. We've got huge runway with every partner because we're a new idea.
Right.
Most people have never heard of us, and we want to become a significant part of how they serve their customers. So that's job number 1. And job number 2 is to add partners in related categories. I think there's a tendency to want to move too fast. We get approached. In the last week, I've been approached, had conversations about 6 different industries, wondering, would Commerce at Home work for us? From luxury apparel to automotive to cryptocurrency. It's endless because people know what we're doing. And the answer is yes, it would work for the premium companies for most. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to pursue because you can get distracted pretty easy. So what I'm actually focused on, and why don't we end? I'll just tell you what we're doing on returning to work.
Yeah.
So we're going to open up our office in September, but we're taking kind of a different tact. We think remote worked really well. It was great for our team. They loved the time they had and the freedom they had to work from home. And so rather than rushing back to the office as a ritual, we're going to continue to embrace remote work. But we are going to pick one day when, if you live in the Bay Area near the office, you're within an hour, we want you to come to work on Wednesdays. And that's because the big miss was culture.
Sure.
It was that human connection. It was hard for new employees to welcome them to the company, to meet people face to face. So we're going to make Wednesday our day at the office, and we're going to make it a special day. We're going to start with an all hands in person that will broadcast live to people who are remote. We'll have a great team lunch. Could be outdoors here because it's nice, most days, unless it's raining.
Yeah.
We're going to have one of the groups, could be engineering, present what they're working on. It's going to be a no meeting day where you just do your own work. And if you want to say hi to someone, do it. Because we're worried about that, I'm in the office in the meeting, but I'm remote, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah.
But we're going to invest one day in our human connection and hopefully do a better job in one day than we used to do in 5 days without intention. But that will give us the freedom to let people to continue to enjoy working from home. We estimated adds for about half our employees 15 hours back to their personal life. The commute, it's probably true in Toronto too.
Sure.
A lot of people will commute an hour to work.
Yep.
And you take the prep time and you want to make sure you're on time. So you plan an hour and a half.
Yep.
That's 3 hours in a day. That's 15 hours a week. Well, that's pretty much your evening 5 days a week. You're doubling the time people have to spend with family and friends and their own personal health and their own hobbies. And so that's what we're doing. So we look at the office as a resource, just like your personal computer is, or your cell phone is, and we're going to treat it that way. So if it helps you do your best work, office is always open. Come on in. Come in Wednesday. We're going to build the team. But other than that, we're going to work remotely.
Well, it's no surprise, innovative approach. It's a really great discussion and a great way to end the podcast interview because we've talked in the full spectrum, the opportunities and your vision and your success. So thank you for joining me back on The Voice of Retail. And I wish you continued success, and I look forward to seeing you in person someday soon here in Toronto. Now that we can traverse, so it's great news.
Thank you. It's always nice to spend time with you, and I wish you the best as well.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.